minutes, the week rips by, right?
Man, the week, yeah. We're just talking about how... I just asked Ian what day it was. Just for context, I was Ian,
what even day is it?
Do you sometimes forget what day it is? Like I do.
I mean, yeah. If you're doing stuff, you're in the cave, you're in the zone, working on your thing. You're like, what even day is this? My kids too have been on a 2-week school, not a quarantine, but like a distance learning thing. All these Omicron cases, right? And then so the school is like, we're going to take 2 weeks and do distance learning, and then it's just like, what day is this? It could be any day. It's Groundhog Day. We're in this house. It's winter. It's negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit in Minneapolis. You're just like, you're not going outside. You're just,
dude, was it like minus? Was it like minus 26 or something recently in like UK temp?
That was a wind chill. Yeah, that was a wind chill temp, but minus 26 Fahrenheit wind chill. Yeah, it gets nasty cold, like at night, like dangerous cold.
Does anybody go out?
I mean, you can if you have the right gear, for sure. Like,
what do you do with the dogs? Like, what do you do with the dogs? Yeah. Come on, George.
Dog.
Come on, let's go out for like a little nip around the block. It's only minus 26 wind chill.
I'll tell you what you do. We have an ancient dog. He's a terrier, but he's like he's a sweet dog, Jack. He's 16 years old. But I let him out when it's negative 26. I crack the door open. He runs out, pees, about 5 feet from where I let him out the door, and then runs back in.
He just runs back in.
Does his business, and then is like, oh dear God, this will kill me soon. I need to come back inside. Yeah, and he doesn't last long after.
Cold, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no
really
walks.
Cold. No walks. Is it icy, or is it just like what's the?
Typically, when it's that cold, it's super clear. So maybe it has just snowed. There's a certain amount of snow and ice on the ground, but when it gets that cold, it's not overcast. So it's really beautiful, like crystal clear, blue sky, starry nights, like gorgeous. But no insulation. There's no cloud cover insulation. When the clouds are in, it's maybe teens, 20s, 30s Fahrenheit. Yeah. But when that cloud cover goes away, all the heat rises, right, and just leaves. So it's.
And what you do with that? Like, is the heating on your house just like cranked? Is it just like?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's cranked and it's expensive.
Because it's on all the time, right?
It's just we've got an old house with these old radiators, so it's all water heat. I mean, and they knew where they were building the home when they built it, and I think it was built in 1888 actually. And so they knew. I mean, these big old original radiators, and it does a good job, but they are on fire hot all the time.
All the time. Through the night as well. Through the night, all the time.
For sure. Through the night is just, And so I got to run a big humidifier in the studio so that the bass necks don't just go like... just curl into horrific pretzel twists, So, it's a thing out here, man.
I just can't even imagine, what even happens if something silly happens, you get stuck outside, you're locked out of your house, or
it can be dangerous. Yeah, we have in every car. Right. You're supposed to carry a coat and a blanket in your car, like an emergency situation, because if you break down, I mean, we have phones now, I guess, but man, I mean, it's a little dicey. You kind of think about that a little bit before you set out on a journey. You're like, all right, got enough gas, got a blanket, got and you do not want to get stranded.
Does it affect the gigs at all? Because it's so cold, or is everyone just sort of so weathered to it? They're just it's just everything just goes on as usual.
Pretty much just goes on as usual because it's just part of living here. But it's, I will say that January is probably the slowest month in terms of gigs and things. At least, I don't know, post holidays, January seems to be kind of slow, and then it starts to pick up February, March. But that said, I mean, I had a session yesterday where I went in and do a couple of tunes, and I mean, and everybody just comes in super bundled, and I try to warm up the car before I run out with the bass and put it in the warm car, and I've got, I mean, on some of my old instruments I have, like I have this old Gibson hollow body bass that I love, that it's gold and it's just full of like weather checking cracks. Because you know, I'll put it in the car to get to a gig, and maybe I got to go in and get that coffee. It sits in the cold car a little too long. And
you need like a remote control, don't you, to start the car?
Yeah, yes, I do.
They've got them in Dubai. Like I've done like a bunch of work in Dubai over the years.
Cool.
Like playing out there, and the management company that always hired the artists to go out, the managers of that management company, I always noticed she started the car sort of like from like 10 minutes before you have to get in it, because it's in the
so
desert.
It cools down. Yeah,
it's in the desert. You know, if you get in a car, you can't like get in the car then put the aircon on. You're gonna die. So you've got to put the car on like 10 minutes before. Yes. Man, it's hot out there.
A lot of people do have remote start out here too to warm up the car, but I've got an old Jeep and there's none of that in that.
Dude, I love that Jeep. It's a Wrangler, isn't it? You've got the Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah. Old Bob Allison bought that new in 2013,
really?
And I bought it from him. Oh yeah, he's a Jeep guy for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I kind of sort of like got a like a secret, I guess, sort of like a secret wanting to get a Jeep one day.
You should get one. In fact,
are they cool?
You actually told me, dude. Okay, let me sell you on a Jeep Wrangler real quick. Here's the thing that's amazing about a Wrangler: they can live with. They do wonderful in any condition. So they're incredible in the winter and snow. They get through anything, mud, the whatever. But if you don't worry about that so much, they're also wonderful in the summer if it's hot, because you can pull doors and the roof panels off pretty easily if you want to do that. If you want to do like a weekend thing where you take the top off and do that. Said, I don't do that because it's sort of my only, it's like, it's always, the weather's always changing. I've always got gear in the car, and I see these, cool people driving Jeeps without doors and the top. And I'm like, I should do that. And I'm like, nah, but this isn't my third car. This is my car. But here's the selling point. Something that I didn't realize is they can exist in any group of cars and be cool and not thought of as douchey or pretentious or dumb and inadequate. They you can roll a Jeep up to a group of friends, all drive, economy cars or something that is not fancy, and no one is like, oh, look at this guy trying to be something fancy. But on the other hand, you can also roll up. Never forget one of the first gigs I went to do a wedding gig, and I rolled up in my Jeep. I have a red Rubicon Wrangler, and it looks cool.
You got the Rubicon,
cool. Yeah,
dude.
It's a Rubicon. All the off-roading that I do, not at all. but I mean, I roll up in this Jeep, and it's it's a 2013. I mean, it's nothing special, but it is a Jeep Wrangler. And I got out and I got my stuff out, and before that I drove a Honda Element, and this never happened to me in the Honda Element. I roll up, and the valet guy said to me, I got my stuff out, and it was a valet parking situation, and he said, can I keep this in the front? And I said, what? And he said, can I just keep it in the front? And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, well, would you mind if I parked it next to like Ferrari? And I said, what, really? And he's like, yeah, it would be cool. It would like balance out the thing, and it's like a cool red Jeep. And I was like, wow, okay. And that had never, I mean, in my whole life, like I have never been like, oh, I've never been like cool car guy ever.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
there is something about a Jeep that is universally like it. I don't know how the brand has managed to do it, but it is always cool across for everybody. And as someone that probably needs a little more outside validation than I care to admit, it's pretty fun, and it's pretty fun. And the kids love it. You climb up into it. We'll pop the back and eat lunch out of the back of it. I mean, it's really, really a great vehicle. I mean, it doesn't handle great. They're noisy. I mean, there's things about it that are a drag. It's not going to handle like a beautiful low to the ground car. But something about just I don't know, that thing about it crossing all genres of car, and no one thinks you're an asshole, and no one thinks that your car isn't cool enough. It's wild. It's really interesting. So
they're actually quite rare over here. They're like there's not that like they're not super rare, but like there's there's a few around. I'll maybe see one or two a week, to put it in perspective. Yeah, one or two a week. Like the car that I guess is similar in maybe, well, it's got a different background, but it's the Land Rover Defender. There's a lot of Land Rover Defenders over here.
Yeah,
I'd love a Land Rover
old
Defender.
Discoveries too. Like the Discos are cool too, right? Those old Discoveries. I love those cars. I've heard they're horrible to work on. I've heard they're really like prone to
the Defenders
to breaking down.
Yeah, like a bunch of friends have got them, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm like, the Defender, how cool is it? And they're just like, it's crap. It just breaks down all the time. I'm like, oh, it's killing me.
You gotta get a Jeep, dude. You should get a Jeep,
dude. The Rubicon. That's the one I was looking at.
You should get one. My dad now has my dad has a the one with the pickup. It's called a Gladiator. Have you seen those? It's like a 4-door, and then it has a pickup. Yeah, it's a Jeep, and it is a Wrangler, or well, it looks like a Wrangler from the front, but it has a pickup bed. Just Google Jeep Gladiator.
Your dad's man. Oh,
they're pretty
Bob
cool.
Allison and his Wrangler.
Man,
tearing it up.
He's been a Jeep guy a long time. And if he ever listens to this, Dad, when he got a Jeep, his first Jeep that he bought, I was like, oh, Dad, this thing handles. He always reminds me of this. I told him, well, he's like, what do you think of my Jeep? I'm like, oh, it's gonna handle like ass. That's what I told my dad when I was like a teenager, and it like hurt his feelings, and and then like later on, because I was driving low to the ground cars and thinking like the car was the thing, and then later he was like, hey, I'm gonna sell the red Rubicon, and I was like, oh, I think I need to have that. I want to buy that from you. So it was nice, man. He sold it to me, and it's been great. We've had it now for, I don't know, probably 4 years. It's cool.
Oh, amazing. That's what I'm gonna be doing this evening. Now I know it's Friday. Now you told me it's Friday, I know I'm gonna be drinking wine and looking at Jeep Rubicons.
Looking at Jeeps. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, man. Like, isn't it funny? Like, it's kind of a shame in a way. I think that obviously the generations before us will have had, I guess, their own journey with vehicles, with cars in the past. But for me, I guess I kind of look at my kids and I'm like, I'm kind of thankful, but at the same time sad that they won't have that experience that I had with cars, because all of the cars are just nice now, right? And you're my age, right? Can you remember what it was like? I used to buy a car for, can you remember Minis? Have you seen a Mini before? Austin Mini, right? I've had about 5 or 6 Minis.
Oh,
I used to just
I've always
buy a
wanted
Mini.
one of those, actually.
Yeah, I'd buy a Mini. I'd just like blast it around. Actually, my first car was a Citroen 2CV. If anybody remembers the Citroen 2CV,
cool.
It's like an upside down pram. It's got the soft top. So I had a Citroen 2CV in rhubarb and custard coloured. It was 650cc, and it was basically like a lawnmower engine, but after that I got like Mini after Mini. They were about £300, which is $500. They would just fall into it. Oh man, like one of them, the ratchet underneath the seat that holds it in place was broken. So every time I put the brake down, like I just sort of like zoomed towards the steering wheel. Every time I pushed the brake, I'd sort of like zoom back. It was old school, dude. Never had any insurance on them. I was just sort of like a little rascal in these little cars that were falling to bits, and then it just literally fall to bits, and then I go and buy another one for like $500 or whatever, £300. Yeah, and they're not going to go through that now.
Yeah, you're right, because all cars are like nice, and there's like standards now. And I mean, when I've been over to the UK, I we don't have Citroen over here. Did you know that? There's no Citroen in the States.
Oh, really?
No,
Why?
They do not exist. I mean, you might see one once a year.
Get the French cars out of here.
I don't know why. But it is wild. There are so many, and like Benz makes all of the like big transit vehicles. That's not the case over here. It's Ford that makes all that stuff. But I love those little UK cars. Man, I love them, because where I grew up in Montana, which is sort of like, the west of the US, right? And so my first car, I had like a Toyota pickup truck, and then I had a Ford Bronco. I mean, do you remember OJ getting chased in the Ford Bronco?
There's no Ford Broncos over here.
Yeah, yeah. That was
don't
I had a
exist.
two-tone brown Ford Bronco, and it was a stick. So, manual transmission, just 5-speed stick with the bench, the like brown fabric bench seat.
Yeah.
The whole thing moves right. And, I mean, that was just I don't know, man. That's just what was around. So there was no minis. I mean, I think the closest thing we had to that in the States happened a decade or two earlier with the VW Bugs.
My parents had a VW Bug. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But that never was my generation. We had all big, where I grew up anyway, everybody was driving big, like Ford F-150 pickup trucks, like big ass trucks. And I didn't. I had a little 2-wheel drive, little Toyota truck, but then I had a Ford Bronco, and I loved that. Oh, my beautiful brown Bronco. Man.
Yeah, the Ford Bronco.
Cool.
I follow this guy online, and he's got a Ford. I'm just like tapping in so I can look at it. And
does he do like fancy Bronco builds and stuff?
No, he's just got this sort of like really old school Ford Bronco that he bought, and he's done it up, and it's sort of like, I think it's like an 80s Bronco, and it's so cool.
Oh,
and
he's got like cooler.
He's got like this land, and he drives it around the land, and he's just sort of like he's on the land, and he's like in the Bronco, and I'm like, he's freaking living. Yeah. I want to live that life. Give me a Bronco and some land.
You can. Yeah. Well, hey, man, you've got the land. Now you just need the Bronco. You can roll that thing around in the back.
I don't know if I've got enough land, man.
He's like picking up to the base shed.
Yeah. Hey, it says on Citroen here, cool. Citroens, it said they are not sold in the US because their market share would not be large enough compared with the sales in the rest of the world to make it economically profitable for them to build cars specifically for the US market that meet the US requirements. So they would have to obviously do something to meet US requirements, and it's just not worth it for them basically to do that. Interesting.
Crazy. I mean, I had never even seen that word before. Like, I grew up, in a world without Citroen. And then,
got it.
Yeah. And I mean, I went over to the UK for school in 99. It was. And I remember seeing that car. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, Citroen. Like, I didn't know how to pronounce it. Yeah. I mean, it was just so fun. Like parallel universe stuff, like, wow, they kind of look like some of the Toyotas in the States, but they're a little, anyway. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Dude, I love all that UK car stuff.
Let's jump in. Today we're talking about what are the essentials you should bring to a session, and you thought it would be cool to talk about because you were about to go on a session today, actually. You're flying to New York, aren't you?
Yeah. What do you need to throw in the back of the Mini? I'm going to segue it. What do you need to throw in the back of the Bronco?
Yeah.
What do you need to put on the airplane? What do you need to bring to that session? No matter what your vehicle is like, if you're an electric bass player, I suppose we're probably speaking to electric bass players. Maybe not so much the upright set, because that requires a whole different thinking around vehicular choice.
Oh, yeah, right? You don't want to do that,
yeah. Right, yeah. So I can dive into it.
What are the essentials in?
The essentials. We got the bass.
Do you know, right? I wrote a list down, right? And interestingly, I put, did you see the list?
No, I haven't seen the list. Where did you
don't
write
look at the
in
Trello, dude. In Trello, dude. Don't look at the don't look at the list, dude. It'll spoil it for you. But as I was writing the list, I was like, oh, there's some weird things on here that I didn't actually think that I was going to put. And you've got all of the obvious stuff like the bass and stuff. But let me talk about the things that might not be so obvious, right? And you'll be like,
I can't wait.
Dude. Check out number one non-obvious thing, right? Food.
Yep. Oh, dude, what a great idea.
How many sessions have you done where there's like, you basically start getting really hungry and you're all kind of on a different sort of like vibe when you have to eat and you're like hungry and everybody's eating all of the crisps and the chips you guys got and there's nothing left. There's just sort of like stanky coffee. There's just crap coffee left and that's it. So for me, and it was top of mind because I did a session at the weekend and dude, I took a lot of food.
Good for you. That's where you're playing the Manet. You're playing the 6-string on that.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to hear more about that too. But you brought food. What did you bring?
It was covered in crumbs, man. It was covered in crumbs.
I was.
And I could see everybody kind of looking at me as I was just like in between every take. I'm just sort of like piling food into.
Hey, man.
Do you know when you're on a long drive? You're on a long drive to a gig, right? It's like a 3-hour drive or something. You get in that car and you've packed all your food next to you, and you know that all of it's going to be gone in 30 minutes, right? It was one of those situations.
Oh, hey, a high-spirited individual needs a calorie pick-me-up during the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Food is really important. It's really important for me when I'm doing something like that. So for me, I had a bag of food. I had like crisps, but you guys call them chips. I had like 3 or 4 apples. I had water. I had iced coffee because I need iced coffee.
Yeah,
I just had all of, because I don't want to rely on anybody else's crap coffee. So I have all of the stuff that I need in that bag. So yeah, food for me. What about you? Do you take food sessions?
Oh, that's such a good. I have started
you will now.
to do. Yeah, I will now. I'm thinking about like I've got to head out to the airport in a few hours. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to pack some snacks, you know. But I will say that when I arrive at a session, if there is food there, like a good amount, like a good spread, not just like what you're talking about, the stale coffee and a couple of crisps left over, but like when that's considered. Oh my God, is there nothing better than that? Yeah. Then even if you've got your own bag of food, but you show up and there's a spread. Wow. That's typically not the case though, right? And I try to roll.
Go on. I'm laughing, dude, because like, as you were saying that, like, there's a good spread and stuff. I was thinking, at home, just to give you context, at home, I am really well controlled around sort of just food, right? I have my 3 meals a day.
Yes, you
I'm
do.
actually really considerate about what I eat. I'm healthy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of it just goes right out the window. If I go to a studio and there's food, I'm like a wild man. I'm just like,
you're like donuts and cookies and cake and pie.
Everything. Dude, everything. Yeah. If I was a studio musician, you'd have to roll me in. You'd roll me in.
That's great. Yeah,
anyway,
man,
carry on.
Because it almost no, I get it. It's like reward zone, right? It's like, you know, if you go and there's somebody brought in cookies or something, you're like, oh well, I don't mind if I do. I just laid down a pretty spicy bass track. I deserve one of these morsels. I mean, if I am reduced to just primal Ian, I am eating all the sugar, all the fat, all the salt, always.
Yeah.
But so I try to start out a journey with, you know, a very sensible, maybe an RX bar or maybe a beef stick or something, you know, that's, you know, no nitrates. And, you know, I'm going to try to eat that good fat. I'm going to try to not eat heavy carbs, maybe some nuts. But yeah, when I get there, like, so I've had a bit of that and I'm still kind of hungry and unsatisfied. And then I get to the session and somebody brought donuts. Let me at them. Let me at them, babe.
Yeah. I think everybody's the same, you know. I think it's maybe because we're all a little excited. We're just like, we're excited. We just imagine sort of like children in a studio. That's kind of what I'm like. I'm sort of in there. Right? I'm like, oh, we're going to do some good stuff. Going to play some good bass. Oh, and then somebody brings food. I'm just like, yeah, give it.
It's like a holiday. Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah. So other than food.
I love that food is your number one, dude. No, but I love it. I love that food is number one because also, let me say this. If you bring food and you don't need it all, maybe, or there's food there or whatever, it gives you an opportunity to pass it along to someone else. I don't know about you, but I've been in sessions with drummers that I know that get angry. And there is nothing that will tank a session more than a hangry drummer. If the drummer is calorie depleted, it is your job as a bass player. I'm saying this to the community. It is your job as a bass player to recommend the session break, to get lunch, to pass the drummer a bag of nuts, to do something to keep the drummer satiated and calorie rich. Wouldn't you say?
Dude, there's a guitar player. This is like, I think it's cross musicians, right? there's a guitar player that lives an hour away from here. He's actually, this is very cool. He's actually a rocket scientist as well, like legit.
Oh, crazy.
But he's a really fantastic guitar player. And he was like a pro player, but he decided he's doing sort of like science and rocket engineering as well. So he's like semi-pro now, but he's a badass player. And his name, everybody knows, I would say it's his nickname. He wasn't christened this, but everybody calls him Hungry Bob. And the reason why he's called Hungry Bob is because he gets so hangry. And we were on a gig once. We were doing a wedding, and we finished this song, and I'm like looking around, and we're like, "Where's Bob?" We're like looking around, and I look over, and there's a huge queue down the side of the room in this hotel.
Yeah. Line
and a huge line going up to the buffet, right? And there is right at the front of the buffet is the bride and the groom, and right in front of them is Hungry Bob.
No, Bob!
Man, he was right in the front,
dude. That is
he
like
was
the
in
ultimate
front of him, just spooning it onto his plate.
Bob, that is a wedding faux pas. But
in
I
front
think
of the
maybe,
bride and groom, dude.
God, dude, I think maybe I've been Hungry Bob at some wedding gigs where, like, I don't try to be, man, but I'm hungry and I get the line and then I'm like, oh, who's behind me? The bride, dude.
Congratulations.
No. Congratulations. It's a friggin' bass player just scooping out all the mac and cheese. Oh, yeah. Hungry Bob, man. I feel it.
But yeah, you've got to share out your food. But like for me, it's just one of them silly things and it's happened in the past where I've ended up on a session and I didn't take any food, like all jokes aside, and then it just went really long into the night and I'm like really hungry. And I'm just sort of like, so I always take food. If I can. I know, like, obviously for you, it might be a little bit different because you're flying in and stuff like that, but I'm sure that you can stop off some tasty snacks somewhere. You know?
I'll get some snacks. The artist, I'm actually going to and do a record with Eric Hutchinson, who's an artist I've worked with for, the past 6 years, maybe 7 now. And he is a real food enthusiast. So he was like, what do you want at the studio? And so that's so fun. Like when it's considered, whenever we do a record, he always has a spread and it's awesome. That said, I'm still going to bring some snacks because there are going to be a lot of people. We're going to do like a sing-along record. So there's going to be a bunch of singers, and I bet that spread is going to go fast. So I'll let you know, dude. I'm going to bring those beef sticks, bring those bars, make sure that I've got myself taken care of. Yes.
Absolutely, man. Next on my list of not so obvious things is good vibes.
Best. Oh, yeah. Yes. This is so good, dude. I was about to run down like, well, you need a bass and you should probably have a cable that works. And it's like, duh. God.
Well, they are on the list, but but when I was looking at it, I was just like, oh yeah, these are really important. But good vibes, I think that is just like, making sure that you're socially dialed into the situation. You're there to make it great time for everybody. Super helpful. You're there to do a great job and all of that. You probably have some stuff to say about that too, obviously.
Oh man, I mean, I just could not agree more with that. I think for me, when I have brought questionable vibes in the studio, I always try to bring good vibes. But when I have brought questionable vibes, it is a result of lack of preparation on my part. So if I feel stress around whatever stuff that's going on in my life, or I was going to say I didn't have the time. Let me rephrase that. I didn't prioritize the time. Accountability. I didn't prioritize the time to make really great charts, really learn the music inside and out. Then I show up in more defense and I'm less open and I'm kind of maybe asking questions and I want to kind of set up quickly because I want to maybe have a moment to look over the tunes before, and that is a terrible way to enter a session. I think the best way to enter a session is to be as prepared as you can, right? Have a couple of ideas. Maybe you've made the charts. You have a couple of ideas of some things you're going to play. You've listened to the song references that the artist sent, right? You maybe even took the time to learn the lyric. You've maybe even you're excited to ask a question to the songwriter if it's appropriate. Like, wow, this was so cool. It reminded me of this. Does that resonate for you? What were you going through when this happened? Or, if you have that kind of relationship, I mean, just so that you're not stressed about what you're actually going to do. The job that you're going to do needs to be done. It needs to be put away. It needs to be a non-issue. And then you get to talk about the movie, the family, the trip you took, the food that you like to eat, right? That stuff, that like, when you come into a session and you're not like, oh, okay, so on this tune, when you go to the bridge, nothing kills the vibe more than like talking about the stuff right away that you're going to do, unless that's the artist's vibe. But I try to come in and talk about anything but the job that we're going to do, because I want that job to feel like it is locked down.
Got it. Yeah. No, actually, on my notes, I've got like food, I've got good vibes, and then I've got notes / homework. Get your notes. You've got to be prepared, and you've got to take it with you. I'll tell you something that's not on this, and it's not an essential that you should bring to a session, but it might be worth just mentioning, because I think it's actually quite interesting, is the pace of how you work, how other people work as well, and being conscious of that. So, for instance, the session at the weekend I was on, it was like, I just instantly felt this, these guys are like slow. They're like, it's a slower pace.
Yes.
They want to get in there, and the pace of it is going to be considered, and they want time to sort of like, it's just slow moving. Yes. And I am not like that in general. I'm sort of like, fast pace. I'm like,
let's go.
The clip's got to be okay. We've done one. Let's do another one. I'm not going to sort of like sit for like 10 minutes between takes and sort of like eat some whatever food I'm brought. I'm kind of like, let's go. And they weren't that vibe. They wanted it to be, they were much more kind of sort of like laid back about it. So in that, in a way, I sort of like adopted that. I was like, I'm just going to sort of like let them do what, I'm not going to try and drive this along, because obviously it'd make them feel uncomfortable. But there were points where I had to just dial that level up a little bit. I'm sort of like looking at the time, and I'm like, they're chilling, but I know that at the end of the session, they're going to be disappointed if they haven't got all of these things done. So I'm sort of like, hey dudes, should we just sort of like, let's just do another one. I think that we can, move on to this next track now, and let's just make sure we've got that down.
Oh yeah.
Just easing it along.
Good too, dude. That's good too.
Yeah. I think it's that mix of finding, being appreciative of other people's sort of like speed of work, but also so that you're not grating against them, but also knowing when to lean in if you have to sort of like push the project along. And some people might listen. Some people listen to this might be, it might be the opposite. You might be the guy or the girl who's actually more, you're sort of like, you're chilled, and it's sort of like, it's an easier flow. And when you get in the studio, if the musical director or artist you're working with is more higher clip, it's higher pace, you've really got to clock that and kind of step up your energy levels as well, or the way that you're vibrating, just so you're kind of sort of like matching, and there's not this sort of like clash of kind of sort of like, vibe, as it were.
Yes. It essentially, I mean, what I hear you saying is you have to remember that this gig is not actually really about music. It's about PR. It's about public relations in a sense, right? It's like understanding who you're working with, reading the room, really getting a sense for how people work. I love this. It reminds me, I have two polar opposites in my life. When I work with Corey Wong, I've worked up, where he has been session leader on a bunch of sessions that I've done in this particular studio in Wisconsin called Drum Farm. It's so fun. And when he is session leader, we are cranking through tunes. I mean, it is absolutely breakneck, high output, high energy. Let's go. We're moving on to the next thing. If we're going to listen, there's never a listen where everyone's just listening. It's like, while we're listening, so-and-so will do a tambo pass, KG will do an organ pass, right? There's all of this stuff around, like, time is of the essence. We are moving so fast. Contrast that. There's an artist from Africa that I've worked with named J.S. Andara, and Jay will book the whole studio for a day, and one song is the goal. And he makes it very clear that we are only going to do one song. We're going to get in, we're going to hang. He's maybe has made some food. We're going to take some time to eat, chat, hang out. He's going to talk about the song. He's going to record a quick demo, like in the booth, where he just sort of beatboxes the drum idea, kind of sings the bass idea, and then sings the melody. And then we're going to run this tune a million times. Then we're going to, do some overdubs. And at the end of the day, we have done one song. And that it could not be more different. Those two philosophies. And yet, both of them are so valid. There's something amazing about having your shit together and having to go now. Make sure that the first take, or at least the second take in Corey Wong's zone, is the one. But then there is something so amazing about with Jay Ondara about you're going to take your time. You have time to develop. You have time to ask questions. You have time to try a couple of different basses, a couple of different sounds, and you might stumble upon something that is really lovely and magical that never would have happened in the Corey Wong meat grinder. So, I mean, really, if you were right here, I'd be like, dude, it's a meat grinder, and it's cool. It's a cool meat grinder, man. But it is fast and furious, and it's really fun to keep up with that energy. But then also, boy, to have the room and to be able to experiment and be able to say to the artist and the engineer producer, could we try that one more time? I'm going to try a completely different sound. And have people not be irritated by that request, but be like, yeah, wow, man, maybe something fruitful will come of that. That's a pretty fun, but you can't bring the opposite energy into one of those situations. Like if I told Corey, hey man, let me try a couple different passes. I'm going to play all these different basses. He would murder me. He would hate that so much. And when I was in with Jay, I mean, I even remember writing a chart and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm writing a chart. And he was like, oh, we're going to have all day. I mean, it's not, you can if you want, but it's fine. He's like, we're going to play this song.
So interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really crazy.
And as a hired guy or girl going into that, you've just got to be really aware of the different situations and be appreciative and mold yourself to that situation. Yeah,
for sure. And just know that with whatever artist that you work with or whatever producer, you feel like you found it. You feel like you've discovered how to work in the studio. You have not, because it will change with the next artist, producer, band. It will always be different. And now, if you've worked with the same people or group of people a few times, you can kind of know to expect. But I always, if I've never worked with someone, I come in thinking, who knows what's going to happen? So I try to be as prepared as possible, but then really be open to being there a long time or trying to knock it out in 2 takes, because you just never know. You never know until you're in the situation.
I'll tell you what, man, just to I guess it comes with experience, doesn't it? It's, what am I trying to say? I've got a direction in mind that I wanted to, a point that I want to make, and it's somebody that we both know. Actually, I'm not sure you've met him, but it's like I met this character, and I was like, oh man, he's got a great vibe, which is, and it's like a neutral vibe. It's sort of like this guy could go into any situation, and he's just going to be super cool with it, and he's just sort of like, and I'm not sure what about his vibe gave me that impression, but I was like, I just knew it. Like, put him in that fast-paced thing, you're gonna think, oh, he's just supernatural in this. Put him on the slow, chilled vibe, he's gonna be super good. He just had that down. Then, whereas some people, I guess, sort of like find it a little harder. So, to be, I guess, so self-aware and confident with it as well. So we did a bunch of sessions in New York back to back over 2 weeks, and we had all of these different characters in filming. It was wild. It was just such a great experience seeing how all of the different people work back to back, 2 or 3 people in every single day, right? And Sean Hurley just had it locked in terms of,
I thought that's what you were going to say. Yes,
it was Sean, man. He came in, he was super prepared, he was really relaxed, And there was something about him where I was just like, oh, you are just a cool dude. Like, just,
cool studio dude.
Cool studio dude. Zero ego.
Yeah.
Just like vibe for days, relaxed, super comfortable. You could tell he was really comfortable, made everybody else feel comfortable. I was like, it's such an important part of it. And it's something that, it's easy to look at technique or sound or ability on the instrument, but the thing that's really kind of just like not evident when you see these players is like, what are they actually like to not only hang out with, but what, when you get 5 to 10 individuals, like a small amount of people like that, engineer, producer, drummer, bass player. 5 to 10 individuals. Each individual person will change the vibe of the overall feel of the room, right?
Yes.
And how do you get sort of like making sure that you're not upsetting that vibe? It's not sort of like creating any kind of like misbalance in the vibe, I guess is sort of like an important thing to consider sometimes. And Sean was one of those characters. I was like, you could put him in any cake or any room. I'm just in my mind, I'm like looking at slices of a cake. Each slice is a different band member. You can put Sean in any of these and it's just all going to be good, and it's going to make everybody feel really like just great in that situation. So all that to say that I think it's sometimes missed how important that is, and some people have just got it dialed in.
And I've watched. I'm a big Sean Hurley fan, and I've watched all the stuff that he's done on SBL, even way back to when he did seminars, and I think in his like daughter's bedroom, like with a sort of spotty internet connection. I've seen every single piece of content with that guy because I just was so intrigued by his professionalism, I think, and just his commitment to a sound and commitment to like real intentional playing. And something that I remember him saying that I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I'd never considered it. He's really sensitive to the gear that he brings to a session. He's not the guy that is going to bring a ton of gear, like a big pedal board or a big, huge thing full of pedals and a bunch of bass guitars, unless he maybe knows the producer. Like he's going to bring in a couple of things. Maybe a couple of things are going to stay in the car. And then he'll let someone know, well, actually, I didn't bring it in, but I have in the car XYZ pedal.
Yeah, I can remember that video. Yeah,
remember? And I thought, oh God, because I'm the guy. I'm rolling in there with weird synth pedals. I try not to bring 6 bass guitars, but I definitely probably am an overbringer of gear because I want to be able to not have to go to the car. I also don't want it to get stolen. I don't know, maybe Sean's playing in some studio situations that are in nicer neighborhoods than the ones that I'm playing in. But I bring in the gear. And I usually think that, honestly, that's appreciated. And I try not to use it just for the sake of using it because I brought it. But I typically try to bring, even if I know what we're doing, I try to bring maybe 3 basses to a session. I'll bring something really classic. Like I just did this thing the other day where it was like a rock and roll thing. It was going to be kind of like a rock song, but then there was going to be like a 6/8 ballad, like a warm, long note ballad. So I was like, the rock and roll thing, I'm going to bring a P bass with rounds. And I'm also going to bring a Dingwall, which Dingwall sent a bass out to me to check out recently. And I thought those 2 things, there was going to be a modern, bright, attacky Dingwall thing or a P bass that is so classic. Yeah. And then I brought my big Gibson hollow body with flats for the ballad. And it turned out I ended up using the P bass on the rock tune and then the Gibson on the hollow body. Didn't end up playing the Dingwall. But I really want to convey through the things that I bring, through the curated list of things that I bring, that I'm thinking about the songs, the vibe, and not about like, well, what I bring. I typically play a jazz bass. Like I feel at most home on a jazz bass. You know that, Scott, and we've talked about that before. But if I think that I'm not going to play a jazz bass, I do not force that into the session. I'm not going to bring that and think like, well, this is kind of my thing and I'm who I am. So I'm going to play this bass and it's just going to, you hired me. So, and there is a little bit of that vibe. I mean, not so much in session world, but certain players get like, well, this is my thing. So if you hire me, I'm going to do my thing. And I really could not feel like I'm honored if someone says, oh, I'd love you to do your thing, play, jazz bass and synth sounds. But I always want to bring the gear that is going to serve what I think the artist's vision might be for the project.
Yeah, got it. So let me ask you this, because obviously on my list, the last three things are bass, pedals.
Sorry to jump your list.
Amp, DI, all of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? All of that stuff that you need, right? So, like bass, amp, tune, pedals, all that stuff, right? But with that said, just if anybody's listening to this and they're like, well, great, bass, but what happens if they don't know what they're getting into? Like, just, what are you going to take? If somebody's like, hey, can you come do this session? You've got minimal knowledge up front of what exactly you're getting yourself into. What bass is it? And travel isn't a constriction on that, so
you get to drive
get to drive or whatever. What are you going to take?
I typically try to bring 3 instruments. I bring something that is going to have maybe a bright modern thing. And typically that's going to either be a P bass with rounds or a jazz bass with rounds. Then I bring a workhorse, like I have a 65 P bass with flats, but a Fender Precision bass with flat wound strings can do so much. It can be rock and rolly if you put a little drive on it and play it with a pick. It can be plunky if you put a little foam under it. It can just cover so much. But I don't want to leave that one precision bass to cover maybe a modern rock thing or maybe something a little more mellow. So that's why I bring something with round wound strings and a P bass with flat wound strings. And then my third is going to be sort of like a weird option. Maybe not weird, but maybe if I don't know what I'm going to get into, I'm going to bring some kind of hollow body, something with a character that is. I've even brought a fretless. I've even at this place that I've played Drum Farm, I found out that the guy that runs loves Rickenbackers. So I will just bring a Rickenbacker because he likes to see me pull it out of the case. I don't even know that I've ever used it, but that's that PR thing, right? Where if I can get a sense of who you are as a producer, as an artist, if I saw a bunch on your Instagram where people were playing 5 strings, I'll bring a 5. But if I saw that you're like into like weird, kind of like pawn shoppy looking short scales, I'll bring a short scale. So I think it's about trying to satisfy what the vibe is. But if it's just up to me and I have zero knowledge, modern rounds, flat wound precision bass, and a third wildcard option that might bring some interest. And for me, that's typically like a hollow body, like a short scale hollow body.
And would you? Yeah. Well, it depends. It would depend on the sort of like, if I didn't have any knowledge up front, P bass with rounds, P bass with flats, or jazz bass with rounds, P bass with flats, and a 5-string. Yeah, just in case, and a 5-string, just in case. If they were like, "Oh, we want that
modern,
low
D, exactly.
or whatever,"
Yes, that's a good call, and that's a little bit of I don't typically bring a 5, but that's sometimes I've missed it because playing, with an OC2 or some kind of octave pedal that maybe gets you those low notes. It's not the same. It's not the same timbre or voice as actually having the note on an instrument. I've tuned down some to get a D or get a C or something, but a 5 is a cool thing. There's certain producers that are really turned off by it, but then there are certain ones that really want it. That it's
really
not,
want it.
That it's a necessity. That's a good call. That's a good call.
I did something at the weekend. We were in the studio over the weekend, and I took my P bass, my Alinto P bass with flats, and
cool.
and I was absolutely going to use it. That's the bass that I've played with that band before, and I was like, I'm going to use a P bass with flats and stuff. And I've just got another bass by a company called Mane, Manne, and like this 6-string hollow body, just like it couldn't be any further away from a P bass, right?
Yeah,
it's like the other end of the spectrum. It's definitely not modern sound. It just sounds like acoustic and just like it's like a bonkers sounding bass.
Beautiful.
It's cool, isn't it?
It's beautiful sounding.
And I grabbed it, just because I haven't played it with any pedals, and I had some pedals I had some pedals that was taken to the studio, and I was like, I'll just I'll take this bass and just have a mess around where people are getting ready. The drums will be setting up for like 10 hours. You know how it is, right?
Yes.
Drummer's going to be sort of like doing their stuff for 10 hours. Yeah. So I took this bass and I was playing it, and then we were just like, and Nick, the guy whose band it is, he was just like, let's just go through this track, and I was just like, P-bass was there. I just had the 6-string anyway, so I wonder what it sounds like. I was in my own mind. I was just, I'll see what it sounds like in the band. Right. We played it, and so, and Nick, and after the gig, Nick was like, "Do you want to use that bass?" And I was like, "Should I use this bass?" And he was like, "Sounds good to me." And I was like, looked at Dave, the drummer. I was like,
cool.
He was like, "Sounds good to me." I was like, "So yeah, let's do it on this." So it was really actually interesting. It was a bit scary because I was like looking down at the abundant amount of notes and thinking, wow.
So many things to mute. Yes.
Yeah. I was like, at one point I played something. I was like, that sounds funny. That's because I'm playing a D and I thought it was a G.
The wrong string. Yes.
Wrong string. There's no markers on the front of the board either. It's just sort of like it looks like a dare, but it was really, really interesting playing that bass in that ensemble, and just because it brought a completely different vibe to it. But I really enjoyed it, man.
That's so cool. I mean, because I saw you playing that on Instagram and I thought, I wonder. And we've all had the experience. If you play in a studio, you've all probably had the experience of you have something that you think is going to work. Now, in my case, as younger, it was a fancy bass guitar, right? It was a graphite necked. I used to play modulus and Zahn basses because I live in the Midwest and the necks aren't gonna. Well, the necks still do a little, but. And it turned out, I worked with a producer that didn't want that. I wanted a Fender. So then I thought, okay, well, always Fender then. Always Fender. The studio. And even Sean Hurley, well, he played a Lakeland at first, and then he had a studio experience. No, a Fender. And so, wow. And he really dove in. P-bass forever. But it is not always the case. Sometimes that active 5-string thing or 6-string thing with piezo bridge that sounds more acoustic is perfect for the track. Sometimes that short scale hollow body that you thought this isn't a rock bass sounds perfect on that with pick overdrive car commercial sounding kind of song. I mean, it's so like I have this Kubicki Factor bass that's so bright but you put that with drive and it's magical. So it's not, there really are no rules. There are just sort of like best guesses. But it's delightful to be surprised and let yourself be wrong. If you're trying to force, if you have a P-bass and you're going, gosh, this should, Scott and Ian and Sean Hurley and Pino, they all say that a P-bass is the thing that you're supposed to play at the studio. But I think that my jazz bass sounds better. I think you're right. Your jazz bass sounds better. Like, dude, it depends on the tune, right? And the studio situation.
You're absolutely right. I'm looking at our Trello board, right? Yeah. And next up, podcast titles is P basses versus jazz basses. Which is best for you and why? I'm going to move it over. We're going to segue into it. So if you guys are wondering what's coming next week, that will be the episode.
Dude, I can't wait. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah,
absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for listening. You can find us in all of the places that you'd want to find us, like Spotify and iTunes, and apparently Amazon are doing podcasts now. I'm not sure we're even on there yet. Yeah, did you see that? Yeah, they emailed us.
Yes, I did.
So we will get on there soon as well. Dudes, take it easy. We'll see you in a bit.
Thanks for listening, everybody.